Samad, kind of speaking of that and, growth and staffing, how can a practice best address the major challenges that they see with growth and staffing?
I think the staffing issue has been a major issue for practices these days, and this has continued since COVID. COVID hit, once the practices closed for a long period of time, they came back, started to get back people, but the effects of those haven't still settled down, and people still see the staffing issues. What I say is that we got to think about two ways. One is that people try to do too many things at one time. Like, you got to rethink about your processes, right? So I'm going to go back to the productivity aspect to it. You got to think about what is it that I can outsource, or I can do it in a better way that's going to avoid me hiring two people, and I can probably hire one person. So if you have a front office operations, we know documentation takes about 35-40% of their time. What is it that I can do to automate that portion of the business? What is it I can do to automate the insurance verification of the practice that spends so much time with that? There are a lot of people, there are companies outside who can do billing for you. You can outsource that part of it. If you're having staffing issues, there are companies that will provide you virtual. I don't know the experience, how people, what kind of experience is there, but I've seen some practices using virtual front office staff from Philippines and all those places just to take calls. And I think the technology is going to help you with a lot of situations. So as a Six Sigma Master Black Belt, what I tell business leaders usually is that you got to look at all the processes that you're working with and say, what is my core processes? What is the value added processes? What is non-value added, or non-value added but essential processes that I can use technology, or I can outsource it to somebody who can do better than me, right? And just figure the way out of that, and that's the best way to manage your staffing, I would say. You try to do marketing, you try to update your own website, you try to run for Google reviews by yourself, and you try to do your own documentation. You have to do your own documentation, but still, if you're using paper and faxing and printing and all that, all the manual stuff, you do your own insurance verifications, you still get a lot of calls just to schedule the appointments. All those things you have to think about, how can I outsource this? One more thing I would say is that there's a treatment plan follow-up. And because of staffing issues, a lot of people are not even following up, making calls to the patients or sending them reminders to remind them, and they miss out on that. And that's like missing dollars, right? So those staffing issues are affecting practices in different areas, and they have to look at their processes and say, how do we automate some of the processes that we have in our office that can be automated with the technology that's out there?
I was just going to add to that, Samad, that oftentimes it's some of the processes that you improve in the business that you don't even realize can save you so much money that then you have a fund that you didn't have to put behind marketing to then fuel that new efficiency. I had a client the other day who told me, hey, and I used to work in the golf industry in a previous life, and I sold this point of sale software, and I learned a lot about merchant processing. And so this client started complaining to me about how their processor had gone down. They couldn't take payments. And I said, who are you using? And they told me, and it was one of the old competitors that I knew. And I said, hey, would you be open to sharing your statement with me? I think I could probably teach you a couple tricks to negotiate a lower rate. And I don't even do that anymore. I'm a marketer, but they sent me their statement and they were at almost 4% in processing fees.
Ooh,
I renegotiated the whole thing. I gave them just bullet points. Do this, this, and this. If they won't do it, here's a contact I know that I trust in the industry. They're now doing a blended 1.6 to 1.9%. It's saving them almost $2,000 a month because of what they're doing in credit card processing. That they said, well, you got me the money, Jake. What would you do with it from a marketing standpoint? And here we were, the conversation before that, crying poverty that they had no money to put into marketing. So sometimes it's finding those efficiencies and those automated systems that will, and renegotiating certain things that can solve some of those problems.
Very true. Thanks for sharing that.